Heading the football is commonplace in any kickabout, whether it's in the backyard, the local park, or in front of thousands of people in the Premier League. But there are now increasing calls for heading to be outlawed in the junior ranks of grassroots football. In recent months, more and more cases of historic brain trauma and dementia linked to the effects of heading a football have surfaced, bringing the issue to the fore once again. The suspicion is that these cases are in fact examples of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, a strain of dementia that is caused by blows to the head and was previously known as punch-drunk syndrome. The impact of heading the football, like any other blow to the head, will cause the brain to bounce around in the skull, damaging the brain cells and leading to injuries like CTE. Research conducted by the University of Stirling said that players over the age of 18 could see up to 67% memory loss in the 24 hours after a game. This takes into account a scenario where the player will head the ball over 20 times in a single game. So should that mean that players under the age of 12 should be stopped from heading the ball?
I don't think I would encourage any changes to any rules at this moment. I would encourage the FA to instigate a full investigation, and anything that that then informs to be brought into the game at that stage. At this stage, anything is a reaction at the moment, and often that reaction is to stories in the press and the way that this is portrayed in the media. My view is that before making any key decision in anything in life, you've got to do your research first.
The Football Association have since committed to a major new study, along with the PFA, to investigate the question of whether footballers are suffering disproportionately from degenerative brain injury compared to the general public. But this study comes over a year after the United States Soccer Federation made changes to tackle the issue themselves. In late 2015, US Soccer brought in heading regulations after 50,000 concussions were recorded among school players. The law changes see a reduction in the use of heading in training for 10 to 12-year-olds, whereas players aged 10 or under can't be taught the skill and can't intentionally head the ball in a competitive game. So will the UK adopt a similar approach?
I think there's a great precedent set by what was done in America over American football, and clearly any link between brain injury and heading a football needs to be investigated. When we're teaching the children to head a football at the moment, that's within the rules of the game, and we teach them to do it safely. At the moment, the boys and girls aren't kicking the ball quite as hard, and I think what we need at this stage is greater research into what the impact is, whether it's when the ball travels a short distance at low speed, or whether it's from great big goal kicks taken by men on a full-size football pitch.
But do you think that bringing in a ban on such a fundamental skill in the game would sort of stop growth, if they were to progress to higher levels?
I think any child who may receive a brain injury outweighs any of that.
But what do parents think? Do they feel their child is at risk this early on in life?
No, I don't, because nowadays the ball is so much lighter, so I can't see it causing a problem. They're just having fun, and that's how they enjoy the football as well, so no.
I think there's something in it, but there again I think there needs to be more scientific evidence to what there is, but I definitely think there's something towards heading that is affecting us in later in life.
The majority of these kids will grow out of it at 16 and find something better to do and move on. So I'm not too concerned at this young age, but obviously it needs to be looked at when players are spending a whole 20 or 30 years of their lives doing it. Then that's a different kettle of fish, I think, isn't it?
With most of these dementia cases being historic, it does pose the question of whether previous eras involved more risks of head injury, with the football being seen as the key factor. Peter Holm from the National Football Museum suggests that the material of the ball could have been a factor, but only in wet conditions.
In the early days of football, obviously they were using leather balls, and even though the standard weight hasn't changed over 100 years, when you use a leather ball, they're less waterproof, water soaks in, and therefore they do get heavier. So the investigations that I've done by soaking old leather footballs show at least a 50% increase in weight. So the old balls were heavier, but only when they were wet.
When England attacked again, the shot went straight to the goalkeeper.
The game today is played differently compared to the mid-20th century. Was that in itself a contributor to the problem?
Yeah, I think that's another factor. I think if you just say it's this one factor of weight, that's definitely not the case. There are other factors as well, and you've got to somehow do some scientific investigations, some proper rigorous scientific investigations, which I'm sure different universities can do to prove definitely these hypotheses, these ideas that things were different in those days, and therefore things are a lot better nowadays.
It's been suggested that well over 250 former players have been diagnosed with symptoms of early onset dementia. That includes members of the 1966 World Cup winning side. But what needs to be done to tackle the problem for our future stars?
I think it needs as many investigations as possible by different groups doing different things. You've got your clinical assessment where you assess by doing tests on people, but there are other tests and surveys that can be done on biomechanics where a ball is sent to an artificial head and they take measurements within that setup to see the differences between different sorts of balls, different weights of balls, different speeds of balls. Well, I think all these things, it's a complex topic. It's not as simple as you think.
It remains to be seen what this new study will find and whether that in turn leads to heading becoming a skill reserved for those of a certain age. So don't be surprised to see your local junior team keeping the ball on the deck from now on.